Hey everybody, Sean Briscom here. Welcome to the InsideStuff.org. We're a community of like-minded people, and I'll be sharing with you some of the most important financial information that you'll be able to find on the web this week. Now, this is the week of December 14th, 2015, and so I'm going to be distilling it down to just 5 articles that you need to pay attention to. Before I forget though, if you're interested in downloading a free copy of everything that we're covering here, just go to theinsidestuff.org. That's theinsidestuff.org and download your free copy of everything that we'll be going through. Are you ready? Okay, great. Let's get going. Now, the first thing I want to draw your attention to is this quote. I found it very fascinating. It says, "Everyone giving investment advice should realize that money is emotional and people are different, just like medicine." Okay, that goes for you too. So if you're getting general advice from a financial planner that's kind of a one-size-fits-all program, run, don't walk, run as fast as you can away from that person, all right? The craziest commercial property boom that we've ever seen is happening right now, and you need to be aware of it, okay? And this is from Wolf Street, which is a blog that I follow religiously because they kind of take on Wall Street and show you more of a counterintuitive or the other side of the coin, if you will. All right. And it says simply, the industry holds its breath for the craziest ever commercial property boom to implode. If this isn't the peak, that we're probably close. Commercial real estate prices over the past many years have done only 2 things in this sequence: boom at a blistering pace to dizzying heights and then crash violently. Sound familiar? Does anybody remember the 2005 to 2008 run-up of real estate home values? Well, the same is happening with commercial property. So if you're getting pitched commercial deals for investments, again, let's talk first, because there are some good commercial deals out there, some good real estate deals out there, but you really got to watch who's managing the deal and how the deal is structured, okay? Most of these people that are presenting these deals to you are just simply joker brokers, as I refer to them. And so in that process, there's a whole daisy chain of other brokers that need to get paid out in the deal, which means they're not managing it from start to finish. We need control, we need less risk, less volatility, and if you're interested in commercial property, the same is true, no matter what asset class you're in, okay? Credit gets just a little bit tighter and then more expensive as investors once again opening their eyes to the risks and want to be compensated for the risk just a little bit. So what that means is they're just increasing the interest rates on the loans that they're taking from investors, okay? Investors want higher rates of return is the bottom line. All right. Most of these commercial mortgage-backed securities, remember the mortgage-backed securities that were residential mortgage-backed securities, the ones that failed? Well, the reason they failed was because they were spread out amongst several different types of product or several different types of assets. So bottom line, some of it was good debt, some of it was bad debt, and the bad debt was what dragged down those mortgage-backed securities and made them fail. And when they failed, that's when the banks started to lose liquidity because they didn't have the income streams from those loans, okay? Now, everybody knows that commercial real estate turns from blistering boom to bust, and there's no tapering or plateau like we saw in the real estate in the housing market. You know, in housing, there's typically a run-up and then there's a plateau, and there's a good signal when there's going to be any kind of modest decline. But with commercial real estate, it happens overnight, and it happens due to the effect of outside forces, okay? Now, check this out. This is from September of 2017, commercial real estate bubble. Look at this chart. This is absolutely staggering to me. I'm going to shrink it down just a little bit here for you. Look at the run-up in real estate values and commercial real estate values in 2017, and then look at the crash. It was almost a 40% crash from its peak. Well, look where we are today. This is November of 2015, all right? We are about 25% higher than we were on the last peak. So if anything happens, you know, if a plane flies into a building, if another bank fails, what do you think is going to happen with these mortgage-backed securities, these commercial mortgage-backed securities? That's right, they're going to fail. And what's going to happen to your pocketbook? That's right, you're going to feel the burden and the losses in your portfolio. So what is the solution? Get out of the market. Get out of mortgage-backed securities. Get out of the paper asset class that we constantly say is riddled with manipulation and high-frequency trading platforms, and it's just a risky gambling game right now. You don't want to be in the market, okay? Let's go on to the next one. Okay, this was an interesting article to me as well. These are 4 things that we can learn about millennials from their tax returns, okay? So what they did was they tracked tax returns of various age brackets, and what they found out was that not many millennials are self-employed. Think about that for a second. Millennials are supposed to be the internet generation. These are the guys that, I've got several clients who are in their 20s that are making millions and millions and millions of dollars in the internet game, and they're self-employed. They've created their own companies, their own businesses, their own passive income streams through these internet businesses. But what we're finding from a tax perspective is that overall, 12.8% of taxpayers reported self-employment income in 2013, but only 9.32% of those were millennials. Makes sense? So millennials, what we're discovering, they don't gamble that much, and they also don't win that much. What they've done is they pretty much resigned themselves to the fact that they're going to have to live on the government dole for the rest of their life. They've learned from our grandparents and our parents and Gen X on the mistakes that we've made, the failures that we've had, and they've completely given up. That's what this tells me. Also, millennials don't see much of their debt canceled. They don't expect to see a lot of their debt canceled. Gen X and our parents' generation and students that are actually graduating from college today, student loan debt has jumped to $1.3 trillion now. It's insane. And there are already proposals in Congress to completely forgive that debt. But remember, millennials are just entering the college space. So they're 18 to 24 years old. And they are just starting to get into college, and they don't believe that their debt's going to be forgiven or canceled. So how are they supposed to respond to that? Well, the only logical explanation is don't go to college. It's that simple. In my opinion, I don't believe in higher education. I don't believe that they're teaching our students today the necessary skill sets that we need. If you look at China as an example, China has over, 1.3 billion people in China, and the biggest industry in China is manufacturing. Why is that? Because it's cultural for them. In every single Chinese university, you're taught a skill set. You're taught how to assemble an Apple iPhone from start to finish, and how to do it in the best possible way with the least amount of mistakes so that you have the highest quality product available. Well, that's what they're being taught. What are we being taught here? In America, we're being taught about Keynesian economics and how to play the system, how to gamble in the market, and how to work the system so that you can make wealth on paper, essentially, not real wealth. All right. Taxpayers claimed $61 billion through earned income tax credits in 2013, and out of this, $29 billion went into taxpayers between 18 and 34 years of age, the millennials. In other words, 42% of the benefit of the earned income tax credit went to only 33% of the youngest adult taxpayers. So, as I noted yesterday, this is an important statistic for lawmakers to be aware of. When congressmen envision the typical recipient of the earned income tax credit, they should envision millennials. All right? Those are the people who are taking advantage of it. All right, let's get on to the next article. Okay, this one really caught my eye because I'm getting a ton of phone calls about when is the Fed going to raise interest rates. A lot of my clients are realtors or are in the real estate space, and they're really concerned about the liquidity and being able to jump into these investments, these real estate investments. And so the key to that is, when is the Fed going to raise rates? Well, let me show you this real quickly. This is the U.S. debt clock in real time, all right? Now, you can notice up here in the upper left-hand corner that the U.S. national debt is 18.7, almost 18.8 trillion. Now, do you remember after 2008 when the Federal Reserve took all of the bad debt off the balance sheets of the banks and took it on themselves onto the federal balance sheet, and it was a sum total of $4 trillion, and that number was just astronomical to us. We couldn't even comprehend how big $4 trillion was. Well, look at what it is today. It's ballooned up to $18.8 trillion. How are we ever going to pay that principal back? This is principal debt, all right? This is not even the interest expense on the debt. The U.S. federal budget is actually $442 billion, but what we're spending is $3.7 trillion. That's 108% debt-to-income ratio, all right? Now, let me tell you a little secret here. For sovereign debt, for government debt, once you passed 70% of your GDP, debt-to-GDP ratio, debt-to-income ratio, 70% is the mark. Once you pass that 70% point, you are literally technically insolvent. You cannot pay that loan back. You cannot pay that debt off. It's impossible. We're sitting at 108%, and that's just on the federal balance sheet. Look at this down here. This is the U.S. total debt. This includes household debt, car loan debt, student loan debt, boat debt, RV debt, government debt, everything rolled up into one. We're talking $64 trillion in debt. That's 138% of debt to income ratio, debt compared to what we make, what our national GDP is, our gross domestic product is. So look at this. This is the interest payment on that total U.S. debt. It's $2.4 trillion a year. Or the interest alone, this is not even including principal repayment. Just the interest alone is $7,500 per U.S. citizen. Total debt outstanding per citizen, that's principal debt, is almost $200,000. So the first question I have for you is, how are you going to pay back your fair share of that $200,000? The total debt per family is nearing $800,000. That is absolutely staggering to me, especially when you look at the savings per family of less than $9,000 per family. So the question again is, how is this debt going to be paid off? How are we going to do it? It's physically impossible. And so when we're talking about interest payments on that debt, the federal debt in particular, just the interest payment on the debt, all right? What happens when we're at 0% interest right now and we can barely afford, we have to print more money today just to cover the interest expense on the debt that's outstanding? What happens when the Fed raises rates by 1%? What's going to happen? Well, at that point, the game's over. So what really caught my eye was this chart. This is the current yield curve that the Fed has a little bit of wiggle room. And what they do is that they play with the money supply. They shrink it and they expand it, and they shrink it and they expand it. And you can see during the times that are gray here, these are during times of recession. So during times of recession, they expand the money supply so that people have more money to work with and go out and spend just to keep the economy going. Well, look at the trajectory that we're heading down. They're tightening, which means there's going to be less money available for you and I to go out and spend. What do you think that's going to do to the economy, and how is that going to impact your own personal economy? Screw the national economy, screw the global economy. What's going to happen to your family and your own personal economy? Okay, now this next article comes from Benefits Pro, which is a benefits group. It's a retirement benefits group. And it says Americans' views on financial security vary by generation, which is interesting to me because I would assume, my assumption would be that the younger generation has a little bit more insecurity when it comes to their finances. All right. But let's take a look at the numbers as they're broken down by age groups. Here's what popped up. This is the question. I am in control and confident with regard to money. Well, millennials say only 40% of millennials feel confident with that they're in control with their money. All right. Gen Xers, my generation, 33%. Baby boomers are a little bit more at 34.5%. Now let's look at the next question. I'm not in control of my relationship with money. 38% of millennials said, I am not in control of my relationship with money. All right. That's a staggering number to me, which tells me we're not being taught this stuff in school. So what are they teaching in school? Why are millennials who are graduating from high school and entering college or just graduating college today in that age group, why do they not have the basic understandings and control of their relationship with money? And why is it that my generation completely was bypassed on this subject? Baby boomers are no exception. Baby boomers are only 38% comfortable with their relationship with money. All right. So if one assumes that the majority of causes millennials who were raised by baby boomers, then one could conclude that those two groups have had talks around money and come to a bit of a consensus. Gen Xers perhaps just need a parental figure to help calm their fears. All right. So my generation, Gen Xers, are the ones that are getting shafted here. So if you're a Gen Xer, reach out to us right away if you want to understand your personal economy and how to control it and how to really get a good tight grip on your relationship with money. Okay, here's another one by Benefits Pro, which I found pretty interesting. This is on retirement healthcare costs. And what it says is that the most affluent people are freaking out about the cost of healthcare. Okay? Those who are 50 and up cite healthcare costs in retirement as their number one top fear. Why is that? Well, because of programs like Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, it's actually flip-flopped and it's screwed out a lot of people who are savers. You know, those people who save money for retirement or in savings or in other asset classes, those assets are losing value because that money is being shifted over into programs like the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. And so it doesn't leave enough money, enough cash flow or cash for those who are 50 years old and up to be able to afford their own expenses, their own healthcare costs in retirement. Make sense? All right. Those with an annual household income of $150,000 or more are afraid that their healthcare costs will escalate beyond their control. This is true. All right. We're already seeing that over 50% of your income is being lost or transferred out of your personal economy through taxes and either state or local or federal taxes. All right. When you have to live on half your income, what happens to your income or your security when another 50% of that 50%, in other words, 25% of your money is being transferred unnecessarily just to pay for someone else's health care? That leaves you with very little money to control and keep for your own savings and retirement, to be able to enjoy retirement comfortably. And so it's healthcare costs, it's taxes, it's inflation, it's all these outside forces that are really eating away at people's savings. And that's all being done systematically by our government, by the way. It's not a magical, nebulous kind of concept. It's very, very calculated and very controlled by central bankers and central government officials around the world. The goal is to put you and I into slavery so that we are more and more reliant on the government for healthcare, for housing, for food, for everything that we need to exist on. All right? Okay, I thought I'd end with a funny article this week. This is from PJ Media, and it says there's actual science that says drinking tequila can help you lose weight. So those of you who are interested in losing weight, start slamming tequila shots right away. No, I'm just kidding. Read the science behind it and find out what's going on. But according to a 2014 study by the American Chemical Society, sugars that are found in the plant that makes up tequila, agave, could actually lower your blood glucose levels for people with type 2 diabetes and help obese people lose weight, researchers say. This is fascinating to me. We found that agavins from the agave plant reduce glucose levels and increase GLP-1, which is, I guess, a hormone that causes obesity. They also increase the amount of insulin. Interesting. Insulin is responsible for processing sugar, right? So this doctor, Dr. Lopez, that's funny, Mercedes G. Lopez. I wonder if he's from Mexico trying to sell tequila. Maybe he has a side business, who knows? And one of the researchers, GLP is a hormone that slows the stomach from emptying and stimulates the production of insulin. Agavins are not expensive and they have no known side effects except for those few people who cannot tolerate them, all right, meaning they get drunk. That pretty much, Lopez added that pretty much what agavins do is help people feel fuller, which could lead them to eating less. So again, if you're looking to lose weight over the holiday season, maybe instead of some eggnog, maybe you should grab a tequila bottle, some lime, and a little bit of salt. All right. Now, listen, I hope you have a wonderful holiday, and we're not going to be doing another podcast next week just because of the holiday season, but we will return at the beginning of the year, and we're going to be slamming out a bunch of these. So stay tuned. And again, don't forget, go visit theinsidestuff.org if you want a download copy of all of these articles that we've covered. All right. Have a great day.